Aloha. Welcome to the Mr.G podcast. This is episode number 30. We're going to be talking about nature and nurture and how it relates to all of us. Broadcasting to you from the outskirts of Chinatown in Honolulu, Hawaii. It's about a quarter after 7 a.m. It's already a sizzling 78 degrees here in my city, Honolulu, Hawaii. Aloha Friday to everybody. Like I said, today's episode is nature versus nurture, and it's a topic that hits home to me. Many sociology studies and psychological studies have been done with twins in examining and studying nature versus nurture. And the reason they do this is because you can do this with fraternal twins and identical twins. Identical twins are very rare where they're the only two humans that can share the same DNA. So if you have an identical twin, they have the exact same genes as you do, whereas fraternal twins only share 50% of their DNA. They're essentially like siblings. Now, personally, I have a twin brother, a fraternal twin brother. I'm 2 minutes older than him. But also my sisters who are 4 years older than me, my twin brother, are also twins. So our mother had two sets of twins. Now, if you read the first page of my book, I tell you the odds of a woman having two sets of twins is 1 in 700,000. Our mother also had schizophrenia. I don't know what the odds of a woman having two sets of twins and schizophrenia is, but I'm guessing it's pretty fucking low. All right. So that's about me. But as far as me and my sibling goes, we couldn't be more than night and day. I'm 6 inches taller than him. I'm much more well spoken, and I was better in school than he is. This podcast isn't about how much better I am compared to my twin brother, but it's interesting in analyzing nature and nurture. A lot of people will think it's 50%. So who you are as an individual is 50% of how you were raised and 50% of the genes that you were born with. But that's not the case, and it's different for everybody. But what's significant about me and my twin brother is our personalities are just so different and extremes, and yet we still have similar mannerisms as well. So I have a lot of empathy in my life. I wake up every day and I feed street cats, and I've been doing that every day for 4 years. Now, my brother, he might have fake empathy, but he's more a sociopath where he sometimes lacks empathy. And I noticed that at a very early age. When our father received custody, when we were about 4 or 5 years old, he received custody of both sets of twins because, like I said, our mother had schizophrenia. Now, our father wasn't a good person at all, but even an earlier memory. So before I was even 4 or 5 years old, I remember our mother was moving her two sets of twins across states. And so we were on this long car ride, and it was very late at night, and our mom was driving, and our sisters were 4 years older than us. So they must have been 6 or 7, and me and my brother must have been 3 or 4. And they were letting me sit in the front seat because I was being so well behaved compared to my twin brother. And my twin brother Michael was just on the floorboard of the back seat of the car, just crying and yelling. And my sisters were telling him to shut up, and I was turned around from the front seat, telling him to shut up. And one of my sisters was hitting him with a newspaper, saying, shut up, just be quiet. And another one was doing something I forgot, and then I started spitting on him, my twin brother. I'm like, shut up, shut up, you know. And then my mom's like, no, 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 don't spit on him. But Michael, please be quiet, please be quiet. And I remember when I spit on him, he looked up at me like, and he stopped crying for a second. He's like, I thought you're on my side. And then he's like, start going again. But then also, I remember when we're like around that age, 4 or 5, he had a pair of overalls, and he just would not take off these overalls. And he was just obsessed with these overalls, and he had a blanket that he just would not take a blanket. But then as we got into adolescence, he did some things that are very questionable that I would never do as a teenager or an adult. And I ratted him out a few occasions. Like you want to interrupt the podcast. So there's a huge difference between me and my brother. And like I said, it was noticeable from a very early age. And we had the same upbringing. Like we always shared the same room. We always shared the same school, the same friends. And usually friends would end up liking me and not liking him, being like, yeah, you should ditch your brother. And he just had like a really dark streak in him. There was a soap opera that we grew up watching called Days of Our Lives, and there was a character on the soap opera named Sammy, and Sammy was the nemesis and the bad person of the antagonist of the show. And she would just get into all this different troubles and scheming, and my brother would say, I'm like her, that's how I am in my head, I'm like Sammy. And that was just something that he was born with, because we had the same exact upbringing, and it led into adulthood where his lack of empathy, because we were raised the same with the same friends, same school, same shitty father. And I just somehow turned out much better as far as empathy goes. There was a time that we were in our 30s and we were in Washington State, and we were out in the country, and there's this beautiful blue stream and nature all around us, and not a person for miles, and no rubbish and no trash anywhere. And I had a little bit of pot in a cellophane, and I took it out and I rolled a joint. I was holding the cellophane to throw away somewhere else, and it was, the cellophane was sitting right up next to us. Then we smoked the joint, and then he took the cellophane, well, lucky, and just tossed it in the nice stream right there. And I got really upset. I'm like, how could you do that? And he's just like, what are you talking about? I just threw it there. Well, who cares? And the fact of the matter is, it was a huge deal to me, but he couldn't even register it. Lucky, come on, you're totally jealous of my podcast. My black cat here gets jealous of everything. If you guys like the t-shirt, Cat Lives Matter t-shirt, official Mr.G merchandise available in the official Mr.G Shopify store. Lucky, I'm not leaving the window open. You're staying inside while I'm doing the podcast, all right? We got like 20, 30 minutes. I haven't even started. But that's enough about my brother there. Like I said, I could go in through tons of instances of while we were growing up where he just like amazed me about his lack of empathy. And I don't have a relationship with him anymore. And he is much different lifestyle than me, as far as he drinks and he smokes. And he's just, I wish him the best of luck. If I had the money, I would send it to him, no questions asked. But I don't. And I know anytime I'm around him, when we were growing up, he really took credit. Like, our father, for some reason, always told us that he was 2 minutes older. And so even though my twin brother is, like 6 inches shorter than me, and he wasn't as good with talking to women or talking to people in general, he wasn't as good in school as me. And I've always been, the obvious big brother, more mature, more empathy, but he's just like, I'm the oldest, I'm the oldest. And our mom would always say, who didn't have custody, like, no, 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 your brother Gregory was born first. And he's like, no, 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 I'm the oldest. And then when I was like 18, I saw my birth certificate, and it's like, oh no, I'm actually 2 minutes older than him. Our father is a liar. And then I tried showing my brother, I'm like, hey, Michael, look, I'm actually 2 minutes older. It wasn't a big deal to me, but for him it was. And he's just like, no, I don't want to see it. He like crumpled up my birth certificate and threw it away. Then a couple years later, he finds his birth certificate, and he's like, oh, I guess I am older, or I guess you are 2 minutes older. But it was a huge thing to him. And he's always resentful to me. But like I said, this isn't going to be about my brother. This is going to be about nature versus nurture. And we have 21 examples here from Dr. Victoria Suss, and peer-reviewed by Dr. Chris Drew. So nature versus nurture. An unconditioned stimulus is a type of stimulus that leads to an automatic response. It is the opposite of a conditioned response, where the response is learned rather than automatic. So with nature, in the context of the nature versus nurture debate, nature refers to biological heredity and genetic predispositions inherited by individuals from their parents at birth. This includes physical characteristics such as eye color, facial features, personality traits, and behavioral tendencies. They've done studies with identical twins where they separated them at birth, and identical twins have the same DNA, but they have different uh, they have different nurture. So with identical twins, they've realized that when they separate them at birth and they bring them back together 20 years later, they share some of the same mannerisms. Some of them have chosen the same professions. Some of them have similar looking spouses. So there are similarities no matter what. But with nurture in the context of nature versus nurture is used to describe environmental factors that influence an individual's development. This includes a variety of influences such as parenting style, educational experiences, and cultural background. So like I said, with me and my twin brother, we had the exact same nurture, the same schools, the same friends, the same shitty parents. It's just our nature being fraternal twins was completely different. Let me go ahead and get lucky. Hold on. So the nature versus nurture debate is a long-standing argument whether hereditary nature or environment nurture plays a bigger role. Like I said, a lot of people think it's 50%. It's not necessarily 50%. Nature, like I said, refers to the biological characteristics we're born with, including genetic predispositions towards certain traits. In contrast, nurture includes external influences that shape us, such as culture, relationships, and everyday experiences. For example, when it comes to personality development, some people believe that genetics plays a stronger role than environmental factors. This would be considered a nature-focused perspective. Others may view the environment as more important. In this case, a nurturing upbringing could help individuals develop their personalities. And like I said, in my own experience, that what my twin brother was born with has a stronger role on his personality development. So I would be more in the nature focused perspective compared to the nurture perspective. But both sides have valid arguments for their respective positions in this debate. In the context of nature versus nurture debate, nature refers to biological, hereditary, and general genetic predispositions inherited by individuals from birth. So some research implies that roughly 50% of an individual's personality and dispositions are predetermined by genetics. Like I said, I don't believe that. I think it's more than that. However, Kruger and colleagues in 2008 state that interplay between gene environment interactions has consequential effect on one's character traits. Hence, the hereditability of personality isn't always precisely 50%. So nature is the hereditary and genetic characteristics predetermined at birth and what influences a person's behavior. The nurture perspective, nurture in the context of nature versus nurture, is used to describe environmental factors that influence an individual's development. So as far as the case is me and my brother, nature had a more stronger impact than nurture did on his personality. So with nurture may naturally invoke ideas of childhood and parental care. Environmental components and life experience can shape human mental, emotional, and physical health throughout their lives. For example, lifestyle choice have been found to impact a person's risk for developing certain diseases and their level of immunity against illness. You know, an individual that chooses to smoke or to drink alcohol, like I said, that's my brother does that. I don't do that, and that's his choice. Furthermore, addiction suspectedly can be impacted by environmental factors such as peer group that has been observed throughout an individual's life. Simply, nurture is an umbrella term for any environmental influences that shape the development of a person's mental, physical, and emotional health. Examples of nature versus nurture. So the most common nature examples, eye color. A person's eye color is determined by their genetic makeup and is inherited from their parents. Height. As with eye color, height is a physical trait that is determined by a person's genes and largely determines an individual's adult height. Would my life have been the same if I wasn't 6'3"? I would much rather have had my life as 6'3" than not, personally. Risk of diseases. A person's risk for developing certain diseases can be partially attributed to their genetic predisposition for that illness and influenced by lifestyle factors and personal environment. Immune system functionality. Genetic predisposition plays an important role in determining an individual's resistance to disease through the strength of their immune system. However, lifestyle choices can also influence this trait over time. Hair color. Hair color is determined by genetic factors. Recessive genes, like the red hair gene, generally have to be present in both parents for the recessive gene to become dominant. Balding. Going bald is an inherited trait. Some groups, such as male British Anglo-Saxons, are more likely to go bald in their 30s than the average group. Adrenaline response. An individual's ability to react quickly in dangerous situations, their fight or flight response, tends to be innate in all of us, something we're born with. All right, so those are nature examples, things we're born with. Hair color, eye color, risk of disease, height, immunity factors. Nurture examples, ethics and parenting styles. An individual's upbringing and the parenting style they are exposed to can shape their behavior. Emotional reactions, psychological reactions, outlook through life are also shaped through nurture. Now, as far as the example of me and my twin brother, we had the exact same nurture growing up, same schools, same parents, same ethics, same jobs even, but we both turned out completely different. I would say that it's not 50% nature and 50% nurture. As far as he's concerned, it's more like 80, 90% that nature, that he was born in a particular way. That's the difference in us. We have just so much difference in having the same nurture. It's just completely evident for me. Other things about nurture, language determinism theory. In this theory, the language we are taught as a child will determine the ways we think and interact with the world. It goes some way to explaining how people of differing language groups may have differing values and belief systems. Language is very important. If you want to know more about me, my twin brother, nobody spoke to us as children. So once we got into kindergarten and first grade, the homeroom teachers had to put us in speech classes because we weren't speaking with each other. I mean, we weren't speaking with anybody except each other. We had developed some strange twin language that we only spoke to each other. Another nurture example, values and cultural background. Depending on their cultural background, different individuals may be exposed to different values and belief systems, which can impact their attitudes towards certain issues or topics, ideas, and beliefs. Young people, children are the most influential, you can influence them easier than anybody else. So you see this happening over and over with bad parenting. Bad parents, racist parents, bigot parents, criminal parents. They put their ideas and their beliefs onto the young people, and young people are like a sponge. They just soak everything up. The silver lining to my own father not giving a shit about his two twin sons, me and my twin brother, is that we were tabula rasa is Latin for clean slate. Our brains were like clean slate when we started our first job as door-to-door newspaper salesman when we were 14. And we worked there from 14 to 18. And our boss taught us so much and taught me so much during those 4 years. And one reason why I was able to soak up so much information is because we didn't have a father or a mother, putting their views on us, brainwashing us with whatever they wanted us to believe. We knew at an early age that our father did not give a shit. And so when we were 18 or 19, 20, and throughout life, I've been able to learn and be open-minded to different things. And that's why I'm 43 and I come off as much younger. That's why I'm able to learn every day. That's why you have a podcast, the Mr.G podcast here. Are you listening to the sound of my voice? Well, listen to the Mr.G podcast on your drive to work, when you're riding the train. Listen to it at your work. Listen to it where you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify podcasts. You may have to look for it a little bit, Mr.G Hawaii podcast, but the Mr.G Hawaii podcast is new episodes every day. Its episodes are uploaded in their entirety onto Twitter and YouTube as well. All right, so back to nature and nurture. Another example of nurture is values and cultural background. Depending on their cultural background, different individuals may be exposed to different values and belief systems. Like I said, when me and my brother were growing up, we didn't have anybody, putting their values on us. And so into our 20s, you still have, but most people, your brain doesn't fully develop until you're about 25. So, and they've studied about music that people listen to. You can have a wide variety of music tastes like I do. But once you reach a certain age, like 25, 26 for most people, you will not Be open-minded to any other music. You won't just all of a sudden start listening to country music if you haven't ever listened to country before age 25. You all of a sudden won't start listening to rap music if you never listened to it before the age 25. So once your brain fully develops like that, it's hard to learn. It's harder to learn new skills as you get older, but as far as what kind of music and your personality, that's pretty much developed by the time you're 25. Like I said, with me and my brother, it's a little bit different because we had, no parental influence. And then we ended up moving out at a very young age, starting a job, getting our own place, apartments as teenagers. So the whole world was more in shaping us as far as nurture goes, but still having the same nurture as my brother and him coming out the way he did, me coming out the way I did. It has a lot to do, much more to do with nature than nurture. So anxiety and as exposed to trauma. Trauma, of course, has a big effect on who we are as people. That's an example of nurture. Experience with violence or traumatic events have usually long-term effects on an individual's psychology. They could manifest outwardly with symptoms of anxiety or difficulty coping under pressure in later stages in life. So positivity and social environment. The people an individual interacts with can either positively or negatively affect their development. Individuals need to surround themselves with positive influences while avoiding those that might lead them down wrong path in life. So whatever social environment you are at a young person, especially at the age of 12 to 20, also has a long-term effect on who you are. Relationships and experience and a sense of security. Positive relationships throughout a person's life will tend to improve outlook and well-being. In contrast, unhealthy relationships could lead to long-term psychological damage that might need professional help before it can be addressed. That's even more true as a child. If a child does not have a sense of security, it tends to have a long-term effect on that individual's personality. And a child not having a sense of security is a direct effect of nurture. So nurture and nature examples. So personality traits. The role of genetics, nature, in determining personality traits such as extroversion or conscientiousness is balanced against the influence of upbringing and life experience, nurture. Aggression. There is a debate on whether aggressive behavior is primarily influenced by genetic factors, nature, or by environmental factors such as upbringing or exposure to violence, which would be nurture. Athletic ability. The role of genetics, nature, determines a lot of our natural talent in sports, but also in music as well. But the importance of training, motivation, and exposure to physical activity, which is nurture, takes up the rest of the way. Musical ability affected by genetic predisposition, nature, but also environmental factors such as exposure to music as a young age, education, and practice. Practice would be nurture. So musical talent, this is where you could maybe say 50-50. Musical talent, 50% of it is nature. Were your parents musicians? Are your parents good musicians? Same can be said with athletes. Are your parents athletes? Well, also you need to be exposed to sports at a young age, or as far as music, you need to be exposed to music at a young age. But then you also need education, and then you need practice, which is direct nurture. However, with that being said, there is even higher statistics on if your parents went to college, there's a pretty much 80 to 90% chance that you will also go to college. At least that was true for the last 100 years. It might change now. And likewise, if your parents didn't go to college, there's an 80-90% that you won't also go to college. So don't kill the messenger there. All right, attachment styles. It is debatable whether a person's attachment style, secure, anxious, or avoidant, is impacted by genetics, nature, versus the impact of early childhood experiences or caregiver relationships. I'd say nurture. This I can say it's a debatable whether attachment, whether somebody is secure, anxious, or avoidant, is nature or nurture. But I can say as far as growing up with my brother and the attachment issues that he had, it's definitely genetics, nature. All right, next up, empathy and emotional intelligence. This is where me and my brother differ completely. The capacity for empathy and emotional intelligence is debatably determined by both genetics and the result of upbringing. See, like I said, me and my brother had the same upbringing, so I disagree with this instructor here. That I'd say it's much more nature as far as being able to have empathy and emotional intelligence. Because where my fraternal twin brother lacks is in emotional intelligence, despite me and him having the same exact nurture. All right, next up, spiritual beliefs. Theological determinism holds that God has pre-selected his chosen people who will be true believers, nature, while others think that belief in God is a choice and we must raise our children to maintain a belief in God. That would be nurture. Learning styles. In the 1980s, there was extensive debate on whether preferred learning styles such as visual, auditory, or kinesthetic are determined by genetic factors, nature, or influenced by educational experiences and personal development, nurture. Today, most educational theorists believe that learning preferences are based on nurture over nature. Okay, I would probably agree with that. Addiction susceptibility. Scientists have identified genes related to addiction. Generally, if your parents are alcoholics, you have a better chance of becoming an alcoholic, even though this trait is also heavily influenced by the environment. As far as personally, both my mother didn't drink alcohol, didn't like alcohol, and my father as well didn't drink alcohol, didn't have a problem with alcohol, and didn't like alcohol. I have never had a taste for alcohol, never enjoyed it, just like my mother and father. Like I said, my twin brother, though, he seems to drink. And as far as Ducci and Goldman, this doctor that wrote this, um, they have said that it's more heavily influenced by the environment as well. So they actually agree that it is nature, but it can be influenced by the environment. So me and my brother, you know, uh, had the same nurture, but for some reason he chose to drink alcohol, and I chose against it. He enjoyed alcohol when we were growing up, and I did not. I couldn't even chug a beer without throwing up, and he would drink alcohol every day like nothing. So I don't know what if that was nature and nurture. What do you think? If you listening, what do you guys think? You can write it in the comments. All right, next up, intelligence. Education can signify impact traits such as intelligence levels and knowledge base, with certain experiences inspiring curiosity or creativity in individuals later in life. The debate surrounding the extent to which human development is influenced by nature, hereditary, or nurture, environmental factors, have been around since ancient times. For example, Plato, the renowned Greek philosopher, argued that beneficial traits in humans were attributed to both nature and nurture. He believed people could adapt to external occurrences throughout their lifetime. However, his mentor, Socrates, aka Socrates, leaned more towards genetics as the primary factor of human development, a notion known as nativism, which was coined by both philosophers together. In the late 1800s, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution and Sir Francis Galton's article, Hereditary Talent and Character, sparked a resurgence in its interest in the topic. So Galton in 1865 suggested hereditary influences to be at least as important as the environment when determining an individual's outcome in life. The debate continued through subsequent decades, with psychologist John B. Watson's revolutionary suggestion that environment, what he called nurture, was more important than hereditary factors or biology. In recent years, researchers have realized that both internal genetic and external environmental factors play a role in how individuals develop physically and psychologically. As such, most experts now subscribe to an approach that looks at both genetic inheritance and environmental influence work together throughout life to shape each person's unique character traits and behaviors. Everybody's included in 2023. The role of epigenetics in the nature versus nurture. Epigenetics is the study of changes in gene expression caused by environmental factors such as diet and exposure to toxins without altering the underlying sequence of DNA. It is an emerging field of research that has been gaining prominence in recent years as scientists try to uncover how and to what extent the environment can shape genetic expression. Epigenetic influences are now considered a significant factor in the nature versus nurture debate, particularly in how individuals develop physically and psychologically throughout their life. Evidence suggests that epigenetic mechanisms can be used to modulate gene expression depending on the environment, thus having a direct influence on an individual's characteristics and behaviors. This means that while both genetics and environment may play a role in determining an individual's outcome in life, epigenetics provides an additional layer of complexity by allowing environmental factors to interact with gene expression. Conclusion: nature versus nurture is a decades-old debate that continues to be studied in various fields. Nativists state that genetics play a major role in determining characteristics and behaviors. For example, a person may have inherited certain traits from their family. However, empirists suggest that external factors such as upbringing and lifestyle choices can also have significant influence. From ancient philosophers to modern-day scientists, this debate has gone through various iterations and continues to evolve today with the introduction of epigenetics. Most recently, epigenetics have emerged as a key factor in the debate. Its mechanisms can be used to modulate gene expression depending on the environment, thus having a direct influence on an individual. So it appears that both nature and nurture are important factors in determining an individual's outcome in life. My name is Gregory Brandt, aka Mr. G. From me and all my street kitties, we wish you an Aloha Friday, and join us for tomorrow's episode when we're going to talk about free will. Does it exist? Do I exist? Are we living in the Matrix? What's going on here? Are aliens here? What's going on? We're not talking about aliens on tomorrow's show, though. But hey, the Mr. G podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts. Go to Apple Podcasts, go to Amazon Podcasts, go to Google Podcasts. Type in Mr. G Hawaii Podcast, aka Gregory Brandt. It may take a little while to find me, but you can find me. I'm joining the podcast club, and there's no stopping me or my street kitties. Join us tomorrow. Join us every day. Full episodes of the Mr. G podcast are uploaded in their entirety on Twitter and YouTube. Thank you all for listening, and I hope everybody has a great weekend. Like I said, me and the street kitties are doing well, and all the little street kittens, they bid you an aloha.